We recently reviewed the new Corsair One, and I basically concluded that if I were to buy a high-end pre-built system today, this is what I'd get. It's extremely compact at a similar volume to my current system in the N-Case M1, but has a smaller footprint and offers superior cooling and noise levels for the GPU. The Corsair One can only be bought as a pre-built system though, and a very expensive one at that, not as a standalone case. Today we're exploring the efficacy of the Corsair One as a standalone system enclosure, and what extra work or changes would need to be made. So for those of you who missed the full review of the Corsair One, I will leave that linked in the top right hand corner. For those of you who want the TLDR instead, it's an aluminium vertical tower, liquid cooling both the CPU and GPU with slim radiators, and cooling those radiators is just a single fan. That fan is a top mounted 140mm exhaust fan that spins up to 1400 RPM, and this means that the Corsair One is incredibly quiet even under full load. Thermals were pretty decent as well, especially when you consider the noise level, although I did find that the 9900K that they're using was thermally restricted to Intel spec of 95 watts. The most impressive performance by the Corsair One though was just how quiet the thing was when gaming. The model that I tested was running an RTX 2080 Ti, and if that card was to be air-cooled in a similar sized case, thermals and noise levels would be significantly higher. The only other system configuration that I think would currently compete with those GPU thermals and noise levels would be an N-Case M1 with a dual 120mm AIO for the CPU and GPU. There I'd expect a 2080 Ti hybrid card to sit around 55 to 60 degrees C, and the single fan shouldn't make too much noise either. Now if Corsair were to strip all of the hardware out of the Corsair One and just sell it as an empty case in its current form, there's a couple of problems. The reason that this system works so well is because of the all-in-one liquid coolers installed on the side panels, which otherwise can't be bought. They're both ultra slim at around 20 mils in thickness, and more importantly, they're just not of any standard size. Essentially, if you were to replace these radiators with a 240 or 280 mil radiator, it just wouldn't fit. The pump block and leads, as you can see, have been designed in a specific way which allows them to fit flush inside the case without any tube overlapping. You wouldn't get that with a standard AIO. So with standard 240mm AIOs, which are around 27 mils thick, I don't think they'd be able to work in the current Corsair One design. The radiators would likely be too thick, and the mounting to the side panel would also need to be changed. The only other way would be for Corsair to offer the case and the liquid coolers as a kit. That way users would be able to build the rest of the system with the hardware that they want. That raises another barrier though, and that's that the user would need to tear down their graphics card, mount their own VRM and memory cooling, and then mount the pump block to the GPU. To be honest, that is a lot of work. It would also void your graphics card warranty in most cases, and most people would probably just prefer to buy a hybrid card instead. So then, it does make sense for the Corsair One to be sold as a pre-built system, because it has been designed with non-standard cooling hardware. Now there is clearly a market for tiny high-performance enclosures. Cases like the N-Case M1 have become extremely popular over the last couple of years, and as another example, the recent Sentry 2.0, which was on offer for around $260 US, was backed by hundreds of people with plenty of time left in their campaign. These competing small form factor premium cases are usually only designed by one or two people, or maybe a small team at most. I know cases like the N-Case M1 and the Dan A4 are manufactured by Lee & Lee, which is of course a larger company, but at the very core they were started and designed by one or two people. What I'm saying is that it would be really interesting to see Corsair, which is a massive company in comparison, actually have a go at designing and bringing a premium small form factor case to the market and seeing what they could do. The reason being is because of course they are a larger company and they have a lot more resources at their disposal, and so they probably could do so with a more reasonable price target. At the moment I believe that there is a gap in the market for the Corsair One as an enclosure only, because there really aren't any other premium vertical cases out there. The Evolve Shift was a decent attempt by Fantex with an exceptional build quality and a decent price, but as we know by now, it didn't prioritize hardware compatibility and thermal performance all too well. It's also quite big and absolutely towers the Corsair One, which does make the Corsair One more desirable in comparison, since it can offer superior cooling in a smaller volume. Now, when you look at Corsair's current case lineup, I feel like it, summarizes the current mid-tower case market quite well. Struggling to innovate, just throwing on RGB and some more tempered glass and, rebranding and stuff like that. The Corsair One, on the other hand, is actually a really standout product, and it is kind of frustrating that it's not a case, or they don't have a similar product that is a case, because it does solve a problem. It is unique, and it would be, in my opinion, probably their best product. Of course, that's largely biased on my behalf because I am just personally drawn to high performance small cases, but as we saw before, there is a market for this. People do want high performance small form factor cases. Corsair haven't actually released a new ITX case for quite some time as well, with the only ones being listed on their site being the Obsidian 250D and the Graphite 380T, which are both quite dated by now. So the main barrier of bringing the existing Corsair One enclosure to market seems to be taking the existing cooling of the CPU and GPU and replacing that with something more standard that consumers can buy and install themselves. I think the sweet spot would be to redesign the enclosure to accommodate a hybrid cooled GPU with a 120mm radiator and then allowing a 240mm radiator for the CPU. In its current state, the Corsair One just can't be liquid cooled with standard off-the-shelf hardware, and that's why it's not a standalone case today. A redesigned model to accommodate that hardware would be perfect in my opinion. Otherwise, if you want to build something at a similar thermal and noise performance, but have to settle for a horizontal layout, not a vertical layout, I would personally go with a dual 120mm configuration in the N-Case M1. This case can accommodate two 120mm radiators, no problem, on the side bracket. You could run a hybrid cooled GPU and then of course a 120mm AIO on the CPU. A 2080 Ti and up to an 8700K, or using Corsair's example, a 9900K at the 95W TDP. That would work quite well in the N-Case M1. And then to bring the noise levels down even further, I would recommend Noctua's ultra quiet NFA 12x25 120mm fans. I'd love to know your thoughts down below on this though, and whether you think the Corsair One should be brought to the market as a case only, and whether actually you would buy something like this yourself over something like the N-Case M1 or the Dan A4. I personally think it would be really cool because I really like the vertical format of the Corsair One, but as always, I am interested to hear your thoughts on that down below. As always guys, a huge thanks for watching. Consider subscribing down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.